This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. This week, we're talking about productivity, time and energy management, and getting important shit done. I'm also going to invite you to a free planning session. Every year, I host a 90-minute planning session for all my clients. This year, I'm also hosting one for free for you, my listeners. I'll tell you more about it in just a little bit. If you want to go ahead and sign up for it now, it's at rebeltherapist.me/plan. So that's rebeltherapist.me/plan. I have gotten way more productive over the past few years. I've always been able to get a lot done, but I've gotten more efficient and more effective. I've noticed that for me, it's not that I'm working more. In fact, I'm working less hours. I've been taking the resources of time and energy really seriously in my life. I've been having a really intimate relationship with my calendar, like really using my calendar to block out every single task and then actually sticking with those appointments. I've been tracking my time using an app so that I can analyze what I'm spending my time on. And Breanne and I have been using the app Notion to keep track of all the tasks, templates, and processes in my business. I've created theme days so that for every day of the week, I'm clear about what I'm focusing on and I'm clear on what I'm not focused on that day. And here's the thing. I think all of that stuff that I just named is fabulous. And I want you to try it out too. But I also want you to hear from people who do it differently. The stuff that works for me is not necessarily the stuff that's going to work for you. We're going to get into it with two different rebellious business owners today. You'll hear what's actually working for each of them to get more done in less time and to move forward with their most important goals. First, we'll hear from Laetitia Fan, a psychologist in New Caledonia who helps warrior helpers find meaning and joy in their practices and lives to make the world a better place for everyone. Welcome, Laetitia. I'm so happy that you are here.
I'm so happy to be here, Annie.
So you have in your business, you have implemented something recently that you call CEO days, or you sometimes call Badass Fridays.
Absolutely.
And I find this so liberating and fascinating. So we're talking about time management today. And can you tell us, before you started implementing this, where were you with time management? What kinds of problems or issues were coming up for you?
I'm not a very organized person. That's really not my thing. So I always have a ton of ideas and things I want to do, but implementing them, it's not really easy for me. And it's just, I was having a hard time doing some of the things I really wanted to do and really wanted to experiment with. Things like making art about my work. That's something I was really eager to do, but also scared. So I was kind of procrastinating a lot. I also I don't like doing admin stuff. I know some people like it and feel in control when they do it. I feel like somebody's robbing my time or something. So I tend to avoid it a lot. And so both of those things were quite hard before the Badass Fridays. Definitely.
Okay. And so did you find yourself feeling kind of overwhelmed, bogged down, that kind of thing?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's everything I didn't want to do was taking a really long time. And because I was postponing it all the time. So I was doing it very, very little bit by bit. And those bits would tend to, just take very long, much longer than they're supposed to be, like technically. And the other things I was just not doing. So that was kind of bringing me down because I would having ideas, I would put them down in my sketchbook or in my notebooks and stuff like this, but not getting back to it. And that was making me, I guess, sad and anxious.
And so tell us, what are Badass Fridays? What do you do?
Badass Fridays for me are about making sure I have one day every week where I do everything I need to do and everything I want to do. So that means that I get up, I do my morning routine. That's something I managed to organize over the years. I'm quite proud of that. And I take a shower, and then it's kind of like going to work, kind of like going to an office. And I sit down and I do what I call the first part CEO check-in. So that's about doing all the admin stuff I don't want to do usually. So I'm taking care of my emails because that's something I do every day. I'm doing some light accounting, just checking since I'm working online mainly, checking who paid me and things like this. And I also put down a weekly log of things I'm going to do during my week. So that's the basics. Those are every week's, and sometimes I'm doing a couple of other things like sending recordings of the week's calls to some of my clients who want them, and like setting up a few things that are part of my practice and the way I work with the people I'm working with.
When you said your daily log, is that something you plan on Friday for the rest of the week?
Yes. There's a daily log just for the day. Like the first thing that I'm doing when I'm starting the CEO check-in is just putting down everything I'm going to do for the day, because I find that very reassuring, and just to have kind of a framework of my day and to like reflect on what I want to do that day, because I tend to want to do more than I can actually do. And that's part of my organization problem, I guess. And then I do a weekly log. So I have a bullet journal. You probably heard about it at some point. And I put down everything I'm going to do during the week. Not everything, because it would be very overwhelming for me and making me very anxious. But just the thing I really want to do or really need to do. So I just have kind of an overview of my week and a few things I'd like to do and hope to do. Like I have a special section for that, just to make sure I can see it. And there's also, I put down a tracker about the things I'm doing regularly, whether it's my daily routine is in there, or things I do like twice or 3 times or 4 times a week, just to give me a way to kind of check where I'm at during the week. And then I put down 5 challenges for the week. And the 5 challenges for the week are usually coordinated with. I have a little board in my flat where we have an overview of the month. Just we put down a few things we want to do, either together or individually, just to make sure we do them. Otherwise, it's just time flies by. And then. And all of that is coordinated also with the Being Boss chatbot method that I use with Post-it on my wall. And so I have an overview of what I want to do for the next quarter and for the next month. And then I put down for the next week. Otherwise, in my experience and in my life, my very disorganized life, otherwise I don't do things. So that's the first part, that the CEO check-in. It's usually taking an hour and a half, maybe something like that. But after that, I'm done. I'm kind of done for the week. Not done about everything. Like I still have emails or calls to make or things like this, but about the admin, yeah, I guess admin stuff and organizational, that's done, and that's making me, and I'm very reassured by that.
That is amazing. So then the things that after that hour and a half or so is over, then things can start building up again for next Friday. But you don't necessarily do all of those admin tasks until the next Friday, and it's there.
Yes, exactly. That's what's very reassuring to me, because otherwise, each time a client would ask me something, or I would commit to do something for them, I would usually feel very stressed out about it and feeling like, oh my God, when am I going to do that? And my week is already packed and things like this. And now I can just say, like, yeah, just say it's going to be done on Friday. And that's it. And then it's out of my mind. I write down, because otherwise it's complicated to just think about everything, but I write it down and then I do it on Friday. And I feel that that's very freeing for me.
Does it all go in your bullet journal throughout the week?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Partly my bullet journal, and partly I have like a big file for all my notes and all the things I have to do just about my practice. And I post it in there. So I see it like a few times a week. I see the post-its and I'm reminded of something I have to do.
Okay. And then what about the stuff you want to get done? What happens with that?
So the stuff I want to get done, we were in your program when we set that up. And I remember one of the colleague that was here that day telling us that she can't do anything like this unless there's a reward. And when she said that, something like pop into my head. Let's say, well, wait for a minute, me neither. It's just, if I have to do a hard thing and a scary thing and something I kind of postpone all the time, I need to reward myself in some way. So to do that, I thought about going to a cafe I really like with my partner. And so after the CEO check-in, we go and take a bus and we just go to that cafe, which is lovely, and the staff is really kind and the food is amazing. And we spend some time there, usually between like a couple of hours and maybe 3 to 4 hours. On the day we stay longer. And so that's the part I usually call my badass creative zone. And that's where I'm going to do some art usually. So I'm working on digital illustration there. I also worked on my website a bit over the past few months, and now I'm translating my website on those days too. And so yeah, that's what we do. So we just go there and we order something, either to drink or to eat. And sometimes we order another time a couple of hours later. And I make sure I tend to overwork myself, especially when I'm doing something I really like. So to not do that, I used the Pomodoro technique.
Mm-hmm.
It's about cutting time out in chunks of 25 minutes. And so you do 25 minutes and then a 5-minute breaks, and 25 minutes and a 5-minute breaks, and 25 minutes and a 15-minute breaks. And it's just supposed to give your brain a good time focusing on stuff, but not tiring it. And for me, that works perfectly. No matter what I'm doing, I'm using that a lot. And no matter what I'm doing, it's just easier. I'm not tired. And I don't know, there's something about working 25 minutes in a row that it's kind of easy. It's like, it's not hard. It's not very long. It doesn't, Yeah, I don't postpone it. I don't procrastinate it. It's just easy and fluid. And yeah, that's it.
Do you use any of these kinds of tactics? Do you use them other days of the week, like the Pomodoro?
Absolutely. The Pomodoro, I use it for a lot of things, but especially when I'm working outside my appointments, because my appointments are kind of easy. Like someone is counting on me and I committed and I'm paid for it. So obviously that's not really hard to do, but I read a lot and I take notes a lot, and I put those notes into Evernote. And to do that, I definitely use the Pomodoro technique, just to make sure I'm not either overworking myself again or just not doing the stuff. So when I know when the timer is on, I'm focusing, I'm not touching my phone, I know I'm just doing it. So yeah, I use it for that. And do I use it for something else? No, that's mainly it. This and anything I'm working on other day. Sometimes writing, yeah, when I really don't want to write, and because I love it, but sometimes you just don't want to, and so that's an easy way to bribe the part of my brain that just doesn't want to work. It's okay, just 25 minutes, and then we stop.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. It's been so fun to be able to, really geek out and ask you all the questions I've been wanting to ask you about your Badass Fridays.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a pleasure.
We're going to hear from our next rebellious entrepreneur in one moment. I want to invite you to join me for a free online session, Plan Your Spectacular 2020. What I love about this planning process is that it's flexible. Planning often falls apart as soon as you fail to hit one deadline. And that is not how this process works. Usually we fail to hit that first deadline sometime in like January or February, and we give up on the whole plan. So let's do it differently. I'm going to walk you through this using my unique worksheet, which you'll use during the session. You'll identify your most important goal for 2020. You'll map out steps to make it happen. You'll anticipate obstacles, and then you're going to plan how you'll prevent those obstacles from stopping you. Head over to rebeltherapist.me/plan to sign up. You're going to have access to a recording for a short time if you sign up and you can't make it live. The event is on December 4th, 2019. So again, to get the details and to sign up, head over to rebeltherapist.me/plan to grab your spot. Now let's hear from Ivy Griffin, a therapist in Sacramento, California, who runs Thrive Therapy and Counseling Center and specializes in helping highly sensitive people. So if you haven't heard Ivy's previous episode, I want you to go over to rebeltherapist.me/Ivy-Griffin, and you're going to hear about how she narrowed her niche, how she got off insurance panels, grew her practice, and how she did all that while also really honoring herself as a highly sensitive person. So Ivy, that's why I'm so excited that you're here. So welcome back. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I will just throw in, I do still take 2 insurances, but I very carefully selected which ones I was willing to take.
Nice. Okay. And so we're going to focus in on productivity and time management. And I thought of you right away when I was getting ready to create this, because you and I were talking recently and you had mentioned a couple of things about how you help therapists who you work with to manage their time. Also, I have just seen you accomplish so much. So you have 7 therapists working with you right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
So yeah, let's
Still
start
blows
with,
my mind.
Yeah. So let's start with what it is that you do to help the therapists you work with manage their time.
It's a good question. I think in general, I really try to encourage them to find a system that's going to work for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I tend to be really flexible in my own work, and I think I'm a pretty flexible boss. And so I want to support people in really growing personally and professionally to be their best self, right? And I realize what works for me doesn't work for everyone else. So, but one thing that I often encourage them to do is to schedule out different activities that they need to accomplish, even including blocks of time for progress notes in their calendar. We use Simple Practice as our EHR. And so I think all of my clinicians actually use that as kind of their go-to calendar resource. And so, even scheduling in an hour for progress notes. I also require all of them to complete 2 hours a month of marketing and networking tasks. And so I encourage them to schedule that into their calendar too. But I also let them know, they can put it in Simple Practice, they can track it in their personal calendar, whatever works for them. But it's important to kind of plan ahead and look at how those activities are going to fit within the context of their week.
That's awesome. And so when people don't do that, when they kind of don't schedule out the time, but rather just kind of think, I'll get to it at some point during the month, have you noticed that backfiring on people?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing I notice is progress notes. People start to get behind. And I know I get tired of doing progress notes, right? They are that constant thing that we deal with as long as you're seeing clients. And so I notice when people don't plan ahead, they tend to struggle more with getting their progress notes done in, a reasonable time frame. So I think that's the biggest thing I see.
What about for you? How do you spend a typical day or a typical week in your business?
Yeah. So I've found I really like consistency and routine. It works very well for me. And I think as a highly sensitive person, I find a lot of comfort in that because I know what to expect to some degree, even though I think when you're working with clients, there's always a lot of unexpected things that are going to happen. But I now have my schedule set. So 3 days a week, I see clients myself. And that's pretty much my primary focus for that day. I have my clients, I try to get my progress notes done, return phone calls, and just focus on my own caseload. And then I have 2 days a week that I call my administrative days. And on those days, I work from home, which I find actually a lot easier to get things done because there aren't other people around to ask questions or distract me. And then I can really dive into things that take some more focus that I find harder to do if I'm seeing clients, to jump into writing a blog article and then go back to seeing a client. So it works for me better to have, a period of time devoted to be able to do those kind of tasks.
Okay. So on those administrative days, because that's really, I think that's really a place where some people kind of fall apart on those administrative days. What do you do to structure your time or to get yourself to do the tasks that are most important at home?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tried a lot of different systems for a while until I kind of honed in on what works for me. I went from trying paper calendars to keeping lists on notepads, and then I would end up with lists all over the place. And I used to try keeping lists in the notes app on my phone, but then I wouldn't find it, or I'd forget to go back that I had a list that I wanted to work on. So anyway, the best thing I found that works for me is the Trello app.
Ooh, okay. Tell us how you use that.
Yeah, I love it because I can create different categories. So I usually have a list running that's things I want to accomplish this week and then next week and then for the month. And then I'll have like long-term goals. And so with Trello, you can then, add an activity to a list and you can also move them around at any time, which I feel like gives me a lot more flexibility. With a paper list, you write it down and then something changes and it's just hard to deal with. And so what I do on my administrative days is I have like my task for this week that I want to accomplish. And then I try to go in and prioritize, okay, what's most important of these? And then I sometimes I kind of play games with myself with like what I'm most interested in doing. Because I definitely have those days where I'm just like, I don't want to do any of this, or it just doesn't sound appealing. And so I'll look through the list of what has to get done and I'll pick like what pulls me in the most or, what I find the most interesting at that time. Because I figure I'm still working through the list, but that's kind of a good entry point to get me started. And then a lot of times as I work, I will find I get energized by what I'm doing. And then it kind of leads on to the next thing. But overall, I think what I found most helpful is just to have those different list of this week, next week, long term, and being able to kind of categorize items I need to do and move them around. And then also, if I'm home in the evening or, on the weekend and an idea pops into my head, I can just go put it in that list and I know it's there, and it gives me some relief that I don't have to keep thinking about it or worrying about it during my off time.
Yes. Okay, so you will go in as an entry point to the place where you're feeling most interested. And I know some people use this idea of eat the frog, of like doing the worst thing first, like doing the thing first that they're dreading so that they can get it over with and then not dread the rest of their workday. I guess that's how I think of it. And so I really like that you're saying you kind of do the opposite. Like what works for you is to really ease in with something you're going to enjoy, and then that will give you the momentum to keep going. Have you ever tried it the other way, like that eat the frog way?
A few times, and it feels more like pulling teeth to me. I the first thing I think of when you say eat the frog is anything dealing with an insurance company. It's usually the top of my list of what I don't want to do. And I just find that a really like painful way to start the day. And so I'd much rather like kind of ease my way into it. And then with those tasks that I really don't want to do, sometimes I'll even try to reward myself. I'm like, okay, suck it up and do this for the next half hour or an hour. And then you can take a break or have lunch or get a snack or, whatever. But mentally, it gives me a little more encouragement to like, okay, just get it done and then you can move on.
Yeah. What would be something that might show up on your list that you actually find you want to start with?
I found I really like planning. So I get excited thinking about, next year. Like I've already quite a bit been thinking about what I want to do with my business in 2020. And there are some systems we have that I want to tweak and change some. So I've been playing around with different ideas for what that looks like. And I have some spreadsheets and, some different Google documents that I'm working on that I want to implement then. So I get really excited about improving our processes, which I never thought I would say because that just sounds not so exciting. But I I do get really energized by the thought of like making our work better, and being able to provide a better service to our clients and have a more enjoyable work environment for ourselves. And so things that move us in that direction really excite me. And then probably the other one is I found I really do enjoy writing and, writing blogs and creating content. And that can be, kind of fun and playful, in a different type of way from providing direct service. And so I think those would probably be the top two. Anything planning ahead to improve processes and then, writing in general.
How much time do you think you spend like per week on writing?
Probably no more than an hour or so. I have two newsletter email lists that I do, and they both go out once a month, which I came up with because it felt manageable. Anything more than that just seemed a little too overwhelming. And so those weeks I spend a little more time writing, the 2 weeks that the newsletter goes out. But then after that, I might jot down ideas or look at, updating things on our website or even writing blogs for the next month as ideas come to me. But really in general, probably no more than an hour a week average.
Okay. And so you have two newsletters. What is it one for parents of teens and one that's geared to highly sensitive people?
Yes, that's right.
Very cool. Okay. So yeah, I can see how that's a lot to hold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I get really nosy?
Sure.
So what time do you get up in the morning?
I am not a morning person. I usually roll out of bed around 7:30. And even then, I'm waking up slowly, getting my coffee, taking care of my cats, doing some things around the house. Yeah, usually around 7:30.
Okay. And then do you ease into your day, or like what time do you start work?
Well, it varies different days based on my schedule. Mondays and Thursdays, I usually start about 9:30 in the morning. Tuesdays, I start earlier. usually more like 8:30. And then on my administrative days, which are Wednesdays and Fridays, I usually just kind of get up, get my coffee, have a few minutes for myself, and then dive on into my day because I can be in my PJs or my comfy clothes. And so those days I probably start earlier too. It's usually around like 8 or 8:30.
So I know there's this idea out there that really highly productive people get up at 5 a.m. and then they like jump into cold water and swim 5 miles and then, whatever it is. And then,
yeah, they sound insane.
And then they eat like, green twigs and then, whatever it is.
Right.
So
yeah, that's not me.
So this is really nice to hear that you've got like a way of easing into things that really works for you. Any other advice that you would give your former self in looking at productivity and what has turned out to really work for you?
I think I've said this before, but I come back so much to what you told us when I was on the superpower group, which was that we underestimate what we can, or we overestimate what we can do in a small amount of time, and we underestimate what we can do over long periods of time. And I find that so helpful because some days, if I can just get started on something, even if I can't finish it, I really can just keep coming back to it. And I find often that I'm surprised, that within 2 weeks or a month, I finished this thing that felt like it was going to be a big project. And now it's all done. I'm like, oh, that wasn't too big of a deal. So I think for me, just really knowing to stick with things. And it's okay to just spend even half an hour on something and then have it on my list so I don't forget about it, because that's easy to do too, and all the hustle and bustle. And then just keep coming back to it again and again and working through.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah. I've definitely noticed that for myself, that I'll see, oh, I can still fall into it. Oh, I've got this free day coming up. I'll be able to catch up on this and this and this and do all of this. And that actually isn't true. That's not how it works. It's so much more that little bits over time of just like regular little bits of time given to a project.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will add that I am someone who actually gets bored if I spend too much time working on one project. I know a lot of the advice out there talks about chunking your time, and scheduling blocks to like write all your blogs for the month or, do all your website updates. But that actually doesn't work for me because I also find I get bored and tired. And then once I feel that way, I'm not energized or motivated to keep going. So it keeps me more focused if I switch between different tasks, do something for a while, and then, then I switch to something else. And then it's new and it's more interesting and doesn't just feel like I'm slogging through.
Okay, I love that. And that actually kind of makes me want to, as I name this episode, to maybe include something about energy management, because it feels like energy management is such a huge part of what we're talking about. It's like when we feel energy, we can do freaking anything. And when we're not, it doesn't matter how good our systems are. We're just like lumps.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, part of managing that energy is having really strict boundaries around when I'm finished with work, which can be especially important on my administrative days because I'm at home. And so it can easily kind of bleed into the next thing. But it works really well that when my husband gets home for the day, I'm just done. Wherever I am, I'm just going to put it away. And then I literally plug my work phone into another room and I don't look at it until I'm ready to start the next day because I just don't want to think about it. And that helps me manage my energy without getting stressed about work-related things, when I'm trying to relax for the evening.
Brilliant. And I'm hearing you have a separate work phone.
I do. I used to do it all on the same one. And I learned the hard way. Sometimes an email would pop up or a text from a client. I get concerned and then so much energy can go into that. And so it just works for me to keep it very separate.
Okay. I love it. That's so smart. This is brilliant. Anything else you want to add that I haven't asked about?
Not really. I would just encourage people to stick with it. And to know that they can accomplish things and to stick with figuring out a process that works for them and then, sort out their goals and keep working through them.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ivy, for, speaking of time management, fitting us in to your day on Halloween. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Happy Halloween.
Yeah, you too. You can find out more about Leticia at leticiafan.com. You can find out more about Ivy Griffin at thrivetherapyandcounseling.com. I want to thank Cosmopalms for editing the show and Breanne Rising for coordinating the experiences of our wonderful guests. I'll see you next time.